guys. I am so glad that you are interested in talking about communicating with families and willing to take some time out of your day to talk about that. But I'm also super bummed that I can't be with you in person. So, the game plan for today is I put together a little video talking about a couple of my favorite tips and just things to remember when I'm communicating with families. But then you'll also have time to get to talk with each other and share some best secrets and advice and favorite things to do. All right, so today we are talking about communicating with families in meaningful and effective ways. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so just one of the places I always start is thinking about St. Charles. So within our school district, we know that 50.7% of our students in our school district receive free or reduced lunch. Now, while we know that poverty is not causation for low literacy levels, we know that those two things can sometimes go together. And so it's really important in my mind to keep that 50% at the forefront of my thinking when I'm communicating with families. I want to think about using simpler language, and we'll talk about all of that here in a minute, but that's just a really important statistic that I keep in my head. In the city of St. Charles itself, there's an 8.14% poverty rate, and 8.3% speak another language. So if you look within the City of St. Charles School District statistics, you'll find that only about 3% are English language learners. But that's only considering the students currently receiving services. That doesn't factor in students who never qualified for services because they knew enough English when they came, or students who have fully exited out of the program. And so even though those students may be fluent in English, that doesn't necessarily mean that their families are totally fluent in English. At our school, there are usually between 40 and 50 families who request translators. And so that's just another thing to keep in mind when you're communicating with families. I know one thing that we do every year is ask who needs translators. That's one thing I'm really proud of our school about. We do that really well. Just to make sure that we're meeting those needs the best we can. But that 8.3% is just something to consider, something to keep in mind. If you're interested in getting some more just basic statistics and demographics about our city, I included a link. I like the way that this website lays it out. Of course, you'll find slightly different statistics, different places you look, but I like that this one includes a lot of graphs. And then also, I included the Greater St. Louis BJH analysis from Barnes Jewish Hospital. A couple of years ago, they made a really big focus on making sure that they were reaching the community in meaningful and effective ways also. And one of the things that they found in the Greater St. Louis area is that health literacy was really lacking. A lot of the brochures and pamphlets that were offered at doctors' offices were written at high school and college level, by doctors. But the average reading level that they were noticing within the Greater St. Louis area was a third grade reading level. And so they noticed that their paper communication was not meeting the needs of their families, and so they actually redid all of their pamphlets and things. Anyway, so that was just an interesting other focus outside of school with a different group of people trying to communicate better. And so I thought that was a really interesting scenario. Okay. So I included that analysis if you want to read a little bit more about health literacy in the area. All right. So we're going to go ahead and just start with how we can communicate well with families who don't speak English, because that is one of my favorite things to talk about. There are a couple of options for where you can start. I know that my face is kind of covering up part of it, so I'll explain what it says, and you can always look at this presentation later. So there are lots of options for communicating home in good, effective ways, even if a family doesn't speak English, and some of them you're really familiar with. So, of course, you can send home a video showing families how to translate using Class Dojo. There is that translate option underneath the message, but if you're if the app is in English and they don't know to look for it, then they don't always know that they can translate it, or that they can send messages back in Spanish for you. And so that is one step that you could do just to make sure that your families understand how to use that app. If you want, like, we could even work together with some other teachers who speak Spanish and make a video in Spanish to send to help walk through those steps of how to use Class Dojo. So if you're noticing that your Spanish-speaking families aren't responding on Class Dojo, that might be a good option. Another option is using the Talking Points app. When you Google it, make sure you search Talking Points app. Something will come up automatically that says Talking Points memo. That's different. Don't click on it. So Talking Points app, that's what I use with my families. It has a lot of different languages available, and it automatically translates. The parents don't have to click on anything. You put in what language you want the message to be sent in. And so you type in English, it automatically shows up on their phone in Spanish or Arabic or French. There are lots of different options. And then they can type in their language and it comes back to you in English. So it's a really handy way to communicate. This one can be used as an app, but it can also just be sent as an SMS text message like Remind. So if your families don't have phones that can have apps on them, or they just don't like getting apps, they're just not downloading it, that could be another option for communicating with families. Another thing that you can do is when you're making videos to send home, you can add captions. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and I hope that it shows up on your end. So even in Google Slides like this, there is a caption option. And so you can have your words displayed, your pictures displayed, but then the captions will show up on the bottom as you're speaking. We know that some people are audio learners. They learn by listening, but some people, it really benefits to see the words that are being said. And even if the words are just in English, that can automatically help comprehension of what you're trying to get across. Another thing that you can do is upload your videos to YouTube. I know that Screencastify is really big right now, and that's wonderful. But if you don't have Google Drive, you can't always access those Screencastify videos that are stored in Google Drive. If things are stored in YouTube, most people's phones have internet access or Wi-Fi access, so they can still access those videos. But if you're sending things in Screencastify, it might not be going through the way that you're hoping it's going through. Another great thing about YouTube is that families can slow down the videos. They can also select the language that the captions will be displayed in. And so that's just another really great tool. And another great reason to use YouTube instead of just sharing videos on Screencastify. And then finally, if you're sending an email to a family who speaks another language, I always recommend sending the email in both English and their language. You can use Google Translate. We know it's not always perfect, but it's better than nothing. And so, but if the translated email isn't super great, the families can use the English email to get the gist of what you're saying. Or if they prefer English, then that way it's there too. And then finally, there are some in-person options. We can always schedule an interpreter ahead of time if you're needing to discuss things with a family. I know that with COVID, things are a little bit different, but we do have permission from the district to allow families to come in with a translator because we know that it's so much more effective to have that in-person discussion with a translator present than just doing something over the phone. If there's an emergency, we do have options to translate with phone calls, and so that is an option if we need it. It costs money though, so it's not something that you can just jump into. We have to get permission, but it's there for when we need it. Another great thing that you can use, like if you know that you're going to be seeing a student or a family member of the student who speaks another language, and there may not be a translator there for some reason, the Say Hi app is great for conversations. I can show you how to use it sometime. Just show you really quickly too. So you choose the language that you want it to translate into, and then I can click the button for English. Hi, my name is Susie.
Hola, mi nombre es Susie.
Love it. And then it shows both the English and the Spanish. And then there's a button just right there for the family to click and say, ¿Cómo se llama?
What is it called?
Yeah. And so it's a really handy app. It's called Say Hi Translate. It's free. That's really just helpful to have on hand, even for random situations that you run into in daily life. And then finally, the Google Translate app has a cool feature where you can hold it up using your camera and it can translate like a flyer that's in English into Spanish right there on your phone. And it sometimes even changes the fonts to look the same. Super cool. If you do ever have a student who speaks Spanish and you're just feeling super stuck, I've linked a document that just gives some basic tips on just where to get started because I know that deer in the headlights feeling is not fun. All right, let's keep on going. So, here are just some general tips for communicating home. Keep it brief. Again, if we're thinking about if 50% of our families are in low income situations, and at least some of those families have low literacy levels, we want to make sure that we are reaching those families too. So keep it brief. Use simple sentences. I know I always feel the need to over explain things, as you can tell in this video. And from my emails too, I always over explain things and make things long. And I know that that's not great. But when I'm communicating with families, I promise I do a better job. Because we want to reach those families who may have lower literacy levels. We want to avoid using idioms and colloquialisms when possible. So, like those weird phrases that we say all the time. I can only think of silly ones right now, like, oh, you're on thin ice, or my mind's going blank. You know, though, figures of speech. Especially if you are translating something, a figure of speech is not going to translate in the way that you hope it will usually. And so just use simple words. I mentioned avoiding using homographs, so words that are spelled the same but mean something different from each other. Like file. I sent something for Girls on the Run once that was like park in a single file line, and file translated to archive. And so just try to think about the words that might have more than one meaning so that you know that what you're saying or like what's coming across is what you intended to come across. Of course, be consistent. If you're going to use email, use email. If you're going to use an app, use an app, but just stick with one so parents know what to expect. If you keep trying one and it's just not working, then of course try another. But once you find something that works, just stick with that. Another thing that I did on this list is I made a bulleted list instead of a paragraph. And you can include pictures when possible. You can bold the important words. All of those things that we do for our students who are struggling, we can do for our families to help make sure that they feel included. Think about what you want to read. I am not a huge fan of reading big, long things with lots of paragraphs. I'm just not. A lot of our families probably feel the same way. If you make something in a list, if you bold things when you can, there's a greater chance that parents are going to get the basics of what you want them to understand instead of opening it, looking at it, and just closing it. So think about what you like to read. When you're about to send something, look over it, see, would I read this if I had 2 minutes during my lunchtime? All right. So once you've established how to communicate, you have some ideas about what it can look like. We have to think about what do we want to talk about. So of course, like there are the obvious things, good things that the kids did, the less desirable things that the kids did, or keep on doing. Those talks before they start getting consequences. Updates about what the class is learning. I know that that's something our school is trying to do every week or two. So just those updates on what the parents can expect their kids to be doing at school. And then, of course, if your class does something cool, take pictures of it, send it home. But then there are some extra things that you can do if you're feeling like you really want to up your game with communication. You can include questions that parents can ask their kids to feel involved. That was something that Kim and I started doing when I was still with fifth grade, and it was really cool. So, like when we learned about shadows, we took a picture of what the kids were doing, and then we sent home a question about, like, ask your kids how a shadow will change throughout the day. And so then the parents got to feel some ownership of their children's learning and got to feel involved in that. You can also include the answer in the question that you're sending. That way, the parents who may not have as strong of education can still participate. So those are things that you can do. While you can always take pictures of out of the ordinary things, you can also take pictures of just ordinary things, like send the parents a picture of the kids reading, just like we love spending 30 minutes a day reading little picture is just something that parents find endearing, something that you can help them feel involved. And then activities or challenges is another thing that you can send home to families. Actually, a teacher from Monroe during the quarantine would send home, like, make the gateway arch out of materials in your home. And then she had the family send her pictures of making the arch out of aluminum foil and Play-Doh and like all of these different things. So if you have an extended period of time that we're out of school, that's another thing that you can do. If it could be a challenge about something that you're doing at school. I know sixth grade is learning about collisions right now. It can be a question or a challenge with collisions, or it can just be something fun. Like, send us a picture of what you did this weekend. Okay, so those are some of my tips and advice, but I'd love to hear what you guys talk about too. So if you could share any of your extra ideas on this presentation that's shared with you. I also included one other presentation that I've shared at an ELL conference before about communicating with non-English speaking families. If you're in that boat and you are just looking for some more ideas, that's another place that you can look. But I can't wait to hear what you guys come up with. And again, I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. I hope you guys have a great day and a wonderful weekend. Bye.